everyone, this gameplay video of my Viewer's Choice 3 deck is more targeted at those viewers who didn't watch my deck building video. I can understand if you don't want to watch it because it's just 20 minutes of me rambling on about cards and adding cards into my deck. So it's pretty boring. I think most of you just want to watch it in action, so here it is for you. Now, the problem with this is that it's not a very good showcase because this game was fraught with errors and problems both on my part and my opponent's part. I generally don't want to publish games where my opponent doesn't have a good day and makes a lot of careless mistakes that they otherwise wouldn't make. But this was my first playthrough, and there are a couple of important learning lessons here. So I think it's an opportune time to talk about these learning lessons. This is by no means an indicative sample of how gameplay works with this replicating perfection deck. So just keep that in mind. Alright, so let's get the game going. My opening hand had virtually no agendas, so I kept it. There was no money, but it's fine. I'm very worried about this matchup. I play against Nasir, and my deck doesn't contain any low cost ice. There's no Quandaries, Pups, Yaguras. Everything is 4 to 6 res cost, except for Himitsu Bakos and Galahads. So right off the bat, I'm forced to res the Mamba to deter him from running my R&D anymore, which means that I basically gave him 6 free credits. It's not really ideal, but there's nothing much I can do about this. And the worst news is that resing it brings me down to 0 credits, so I cannot win him on the side game. So that was a big mistake from me. I definitely should have gained more credits at the start of my turn. So here I attempt to sneak out a House of Knives. It's okay if the runner scores it, it's just 1 agenda point, but if they don't contest it, and I think he won't because he's playing very passively. I mean, one thing that I learned about Nasir decks is that they don't want to run remote servers. They don't have enough money to trash stuff, so they don't bother running remotes at all. And this allows you to score 3-pointers easily. And most people don't expect 3-pointers in RP. Sorry, not 3-pointers, 3 advanced agendas like House of Knives and Philotic. So this is a huge advantage for me. Yeah. And I like Mamba on R&D. Against Nasir, you have to expect Parasite. And that is a very problematic card in Jinteki because it basically chews most of your sentries alive. Mamba is more resistant, so that's good. Here, I decided that I needed cash. Cash is very important in this deck because all my ice is mid-range and I didn't receive any early hedge funds or celeb gifts, so this is where the executive bootcamp comes in. Normally, it's there as the 3rd copy of IT department, which my deck is based on. In case both IT departments are the bottom of my deck, at least I can tutor it with this card. But here it serves a different purpose. I don't need IT department this early on. Instead, what I'm going to do is to find a Sundeal with it. So first, I realized that Executive Bootcamp is a very, very good card against Nasir. I played an IG deck, Industrial Genomics, against Nasir the other day. The one that involves 3 shocks and 3 Executive Bootcamps, and Executive Bootcamp was a huge help. So remembering that, I realized that if I can keep this bootcamp alive, I can res ice for free. I mean, I can res ice at cheap at a discount. More importantly, I'm not fueling his ID ability, which is huge. Alright, so here he actually attempted to parasite my Mamba, which is suboptimal. It will still take quite long to eat through my Mamba. So I actually have a few turns of safety. So here's what I do. At the start of my turn, I res the Himitsu Bako with Executive Bootcamp, so he doesn't get the free 2 credits. Then I tutor my Sundeal. Notice that this doesn't take any clicks at all. So far I haven't spent any clicks, so I can spend 2 clicks to Celeb Gift, which I just mandatorily drew, and then play out the Sundeal. Here I made a mistake. I should have, I not only did I install did I pull the wrong remote into the wrong asset into the wrong server, but more importantly, I should use Executive Bootcamp before I make my mandatory draw. Same reason as using Blue Sun's ability before you draw. This is quite important. So I technically violated the rules. I had the intention to do that anyway, so I just let it slip. But yeah, this is why I don't really want to showcase this video. These kind of mistakes are not very good examples to show you guys. So apologies for that. So now with her Sandio ticking, and it's very safe. It's behind the Himitsu Bako that is res. So there is no chance of him bringing out a breaker that can get through my Sandio server easily. If he wants to, he has to gain credits the hard way by clicking for credits before trashing my Sandio. So it's going to be hell for him. In the meantime, I scored the House of Knives that was lying down there already. Yep. So this is like basically scoring a breaking news, hostile takeover, or clone retirement when you have an archer in your deck. It basically enables your deck to go live. This House of Knives means that if he encounters a Komaino and cannot break the Komaino, he loses the game. And it's actually easier said than done. I mean, it's not that difficult to accomplish, rather, as long as your opponent is careless. So, but first I need to find my IT department so that I can actually get a strong Komaino on the table. And looking at his personal workshop, you can see that there's a David and a Fem ready to go. Two massive cards that disable my strategy. Fem and David both bypass IT department. They render the high strength sentries, the boosting of strength, useless. So yeah, those are cards I'm genuinely worried about. I'll have to rely on him making a mistake essentially to win this game. I noticed that my Mamba is now on one more strength less, and it's gone. So I need to ice up R&D ASAP. I got pretty lucky this game because I'm not agenda flooded. In fact, I'm Jackson flooded, so I can afford to trash my agendas in archives. It's a mistake that he did not check archives. He should be checking archives. Forcing my Jackson off the table. That is quite important. In the meantime, he gains credits, which is always a good thing. Not so much for Nasir, but he'll need those credits for sure. So I install Lotus Field on R&D. This is the perfect ice against Nasir. It will basically force out his Gordian Blade or Torch because Parasite doesn't cut it against Lotus Field. In the meantime, I continue dumping my agendas into archives. It's a very safe place to store agendas. And for him, running my R&D isn't equitable, so I can allow the one House of Knives in my hand to let pass because chances are he's not going to run HQ. Why would he bother? I mean, yes, now he's running. The only reason to run HQ is so that he can access a remote. And I think that's exactly what he does here. Yes, he runs my Sandio server. With Ghost Runner and his 3 credit pool, he's able to break Himitsu Bako and trash my Sandio. Looking at the Inti on the table, that worries me to no end. That basically nullifies my Galahad. Yeah, it only costs him 3 credits to break a Galahad, which I'm not happy with at all. Inti is 1 strength. On the flip side, it costs him 3 credits to break through Himitsu Bako, which I'm very happy about. I'm loving Himitsu Bako more and more the more I play with Jinteki. Alright, so here I deem that it's safe to res my IT department and place 3 counters on it. The reasoning is simple. He cannot break my Galahad with Inti if I boost its strength. So, and I do have a Lancelot and a Merlin in my hand, so he has to be really, really cautious about trashing my IT department. In fact, he cannot trash my IT department unless he fems the ice in front of it. In which case, well, props to him. So, of course, he rightfully doesn't contest the IT department. Instead, he goes for R&D. I do not rest the Lotus Field because that will just give him more money. I'll let him spend his Steam Hack credits. Now, he has to spend the Steam Hack credits before accessing cards. This is quite important. And he made a very smart choice here. He left 5 credits on his Steam Hack in the event that he needed to trash something, in this case the Sandio. But more importantly, it could be the difference between winning and losing the future perfect side game or stealing an NAPD. So this was a very wise move on his part. Even though he didn't make the fullest use of his Steam Hack, you need to have the contingency credits there available in the event you hit an NAPD. Alright, my hand is completely live with Grail Ice. This is fantastic. I can actually afford to install 1 more Grail Ice and still have 2 more left in my hand. So I'm thinking of the best way to do this. I place Komaino on R&D because this seems to be where he's focusing his efforts on. And I attempt to score a House of Knives once again. If he tries to score this, if he tries to steal this, so be it. But if I can score it, it will make his running very dangerous because he's always so low on cards. He has to run with at least 2 cards in hand. One very important thing is that I need to monitor the strength of my eyes at all times. IT department, you are only allowed to increase the strength by the number of power counters on it. In this case, I can only increase ice by 3 strength at the minimum. I cannot increase ice by 1 strength or 2 strength, and this matters against David. So, with a 3 power counter IT department, I can bring Komainu to 4 strength. Here, I choose not to do so because he can easily liberate Femme Fatale and nullify my Komainu. That would be a waste of IT department tokens. So, instead of doing so, I allow him to tutor his Deus Ex through clone chip with SMC, and then he'll get through my Komainu. I choose not to rest the Lotus Field because I'm starting to lose my credits. I only have 8 credits left. So he accesses 1 card. That's no show for him. I'm basically reserving the 3 power counters on IT department for when I can guarantee a Komainu kill or something to that effect, or if I need to defend a server with an agenda in it. So, bearing in mind that he has a David on the board, I cannot raise my ice above 5 strength or more, otherwise he can easily just David through it. So, which means this 3 counter IT department is useless for boosting Himitsu Bako. It's useless for boosting Lancelot. It's only good for the 1 strength ice, which is Komainu, which is Galahad, which is protecting my IT department. So this is why I'm going to leave my IT department at 3 power tokens. No more, no less. So I can boost it to 4 strength, which he hopefully should not be able to break. The cheapest option for him is usually Femme Fatale or Deus Ex or Sharpshooter. And all of them have if he's too poor when he's running, he will get flatlined or program trash. Otherwise, he will get through, which is a problem. This is the problem with playing against David and someone who can tutor up stuff on the run. So yeah, Nasir is actually not that good at matchup, even though I had the better of him with Executive Bootcamp, but that's only a single turn in my deck, and it's not in my archives. So here I don't really have much option. I'm just looking for money. Didn't find it. So I discard my 3rd copy of Jackson. He really doesn't seem interested in denying my Jackson. And now he's forced to liberate the Femme Fatale. I hope he doesn't fem my Komainu. That would spell doom for me. He does not. This gives me a fighting chance. Another mistake he made is that he should have used Clone Chip to liberate Parasite before my turn starts and destroy my Komainu. He never got to do that because he never had enough credits. So here, he makes the game-ending mistake. He runs my R&D, forgetting that I have an IT department available. So I boosted my Komainu to strength 4, and that gives Komainu 3 subroutines, which he cannot break with Fem. He thought he could break it with Fem. Not going to happen this time. And as a result, he's going to take 3 net damage plus 2 from my House of Knives, which will flatline him to close out the game. His other option is tutoring a Deus Ex to get past. Unfortunately, he's 1 credit short. So that ends the game for him. I actually had a chance to flatline him earlier. I think you all noticed. During his Steam Hack run, he had 1 card left in hand. I had a House of Knives squad. I didn't notice that. I just let him run through my Lotus Field without raising it. That was a big mistake on my part. But yeah, again, I didn't really want to show this game because there were so many problems on both of our ends. And the main takeaway from this video is that, firstly, Executive Bootcamp is monstrous against Nasir. If you're playing Nasir, always trash Executive Bootcamp on site. Otherwise, you'll be in for a very rough ride. And secondly, this deck definitely has potential, but Shapers are an incredibly weak matchup because they have Deus Ex, which allows them to mitigate 1 net damage, which is usually the net damage required to flatline them. They can tutor Femme Fatale on the go, which means that they can nullify one of your Komainus, the one that kills them, usually. And yeah, if they splashed for David, tough luck for you. I was able to get the best of him because he was playing carelessly. This normally wouldn't happen otherwise. It would be very hard for me to win. Thanks for watching. Happy net running.